We start Smackdown with lag and interruptions. The leak of AJ Lee coming back is really weighing down on Netflix, I think. Nevertheless, the show must go on. And we start with the first match. It's the draw against the ratings poison. Cena against Sami Zayn. Now, Cena makes his entrance and the crowd is going wild for him. Of course, the crowd is chanting, "Thank you, Cena," and John is overwhelmed by it. He tells the crowd they have no idea what that means to him. Cena cuts a great promo about wanting to have fun, as others have told him. He's really happy to be here and get "Thank you, Cena" instead of, "F you, Cena," like he used to get back in the day. He is hyping up the Chicago crowd, even hints at Punk and AJ returning. When he says it's his last time in Chicago and on SmackDown, the people boo, which is quite interesting. He then talks about his debut, which was a nice reference against Kurt Angle. Pretty cool. Cena talks then about the crowd and all his experiences with them. The crowd again goes with "Thank you, Cena," and we get more hyping, and out comes Sami Zayn. And the people are not even half as crazy for him as they were for Cena. Once he gets in the ring and wants to start talking, the crowd boos him louder than they sung his song. Because I guess that works for a song with no lyrics, but whatever. Zayn is trying to play the face, but the crowd continues to boo him. Cena tries a save, but the crowd still boos him in the end. Well, what can you do? Zayn talks about how he wants to thank Cena on behalf of everybody in the back, and more importantly, he wants to thank Cena for what he did for him during the US Open Challenge. At the thank you part, the crowd cheered, so I guess he's getting a good reaction there. Zayn then talks about their history, more blah blah blah, and Zayn asks Cena for permission to start his own US Open Challenge. Of course, Cena says yes. Some more talk from Zayn, and he wants to give Cena a match for the US title. What better way to start his own Open Challenge? And it's not in a week, in a month, it's right now. Of course, Cena says yes, and they move on to the match. It was a good promo from Cena, and Zayn was pretty decent. We can't ignore the fact that the crowd booed him, but yeah, whatever. You would think we go to the match, but we don't. We have a 3-minute ad break after a WWE on ESPN ad. Those are always nice to see. Anyway, back to the wrestling ring, and the match starts. It's a slowish type of match. A botch from Zayn trying to jump over Cena, but that's kinda meh, and it seems to be the only problem the whole match. The crowd chants, "Let's go Cena," and Sami sucks, which I totally agree with that second part. When Zayn gets control, people are booing him. Nice. There is an ad break, and that means both guys get to spend more time on the ground than they should. Cena with a 5-knuckle shuffle. Then some more action. Cena catches Zayn in a fireman's carry. Cole mentions that the attitude adjustment, the AA, was once called the FU. Very important nod. I like that. Let's not forget history. Zayn counters, and they're both on the ground. At some point, the match moves on, and Zayn tries Tornado DDT. Cena counters with an attitude adjustment, and our favorites, near falls. Zayn kicks out. Some more wrestling, and Cena hits Zayn with a pop-up powerbomb. Kick out, of course. Zayn misses the Helluva kick, and Cena brings out the Angle Slam. Pin and kick out again, because that's how this show goes. At this point, we all know who's going to win. We miss an exploder suplex thanks to the playback, and Zayn follows with his finisher. Cena kicks out. Well, that's good, I guess. At least we get the suplex in the playback, so it wasn't wasted. At some point, we get a spear from Cena. Nice nod to Edge. Too bad he's in AEW right now. And guess what? Guess what happens after that? Some more wrestling, and Cena with an avalanche AA. Both men are out, and here comes the beast, Brock Lesnar. He takes out the ref, F5 on Zayn, followed by 2 more on Cena, and the crowd is booing him like mad. As Lesnar goes backstage, a front row fan is screaming "Why?", which I found really funny. This was an unexpected surprise from Noseman, and I think it's quite refreshing to be honest. And that's how it ended, which is quite meh overall, and it kind of counterbalances how good it was with Lesnar coming in and doing his thing. Amazing surprise, but the match ended flat. I guess that's one way to start the Zayn US Open Challenge. We got a shot of Brock and Gorilla saying he'll see Cena at WrestlePalooza, and that's your confirmation for the match. Melo don't miss backstage with Nick Aldis. Melo wants a US title shot. Of course, Miz wants the tag team titles. Nick is sick of them and doesn't have time for that. Melo and Miz have a little discussion about the titles, and there is tension there, but there's been tension there for a while. Becky Lynch arrives in the arena and gets down from her car. Yeah, that's about it. We'll see more of her later on. We get a vignette from Aleister Black on Damian Priest, and it was decent. So we move on now to the match. And I realized something very funny during Priest's entrance. It really reminded me that there are many gods in this company. I'm half expecting them to form a stable named We Sack Rome. Might as well do it since you did it with Hispanics. Doesn't matter. Black attacks Priest from behind. Damian ends up laid in the crowd and Black goes in the ring. Another 3-minute ad break. Nice. Back on the show, refs are surrounding Priest on the ramp and seeing if he's okay. He pushes them off and goes to the ring. They end up in the ring and the bell rings. Priest is suffering from the previous attacks. Cole hypes up that Black has learned Muay Thai and he knows other martial arts. Priest makes a comeback. Black with some weird armbar that's kind of strange, but you know what? It's wrestling, makes sense. Graves hypes up Priest that he won 2 medal trophies, thingies, whatever in karate. I really hate that. They should really be specific with the type of karate people do. But you know what? That's more of a meeting at this point, whatever. Aleister Black was dominating during the match. Priest gets some in there, but Black remains dominant. Priest gets his comeback at some point, does a very bad looking flatliner in the apron. After that, he hits a razor's edge on the announce table. Priest sends Black back in the ring. Black is crawling away from Priest, and Damian does this weird thing where he thinks he's Kurt Angle, you know, the thing where he takes off his straps. It looks weird on him. I don't really like it when he does that. Anyway, Black pushes the ref into Priest and does a Black Mass. 1, 2, 3, Aleister Black wins. Overall, it was decent to good, can't really complain. Next, we get a promo for Worlds Collide, and that looked mighty interesting. I might look into it. I might watch it, in fact. Next, we have a vignette between Randy Orton and Drew McIntyre. This was very good. This was very good. Too bad there was a Twisted Tea ad in the left corner. Whatever. Ending it with a shot of the stupid tea really ruined it, though. That really spoiled it. Anyway, next Smackdown, we get Randy versus Drew. We also learn that next week we get Brock live, and then there's a match between Tiffany Stratton and Jade Cargill. Now a backstage interview with Tiffany where she says she will beat Jade, and I like this part where she says she will stick her foot up Jade's, let's say, eye of the storm. That was pretty good. That got a chuckle out of me. A little one. Then we move on to a backstage segment between Jade and Nia Jax comes in. Some tension there, but we move on pretty fast from that one. Oh boy. Now it's time for the Women's US title. Julia versus Michin. Julia enters first, and then we get an ad for WrestlePalooza on ESPN, followed by another 3-minute break during Julia's entrance. Granted, she was next to the ring at that point, so can't really complain that much. But when we come back, we don't get back in the ring. No, we get a backstage segment with Becky Lynch. Nick Aldis comes in, tells her that he can't have any more issues. And I couldn't hear anything Becky said. I'm not sure if it was either because she was whispering, because her mic was low, if it even worked to begin with. I don't know. But there's not much to say about that one. Back in the ring, Michin makes her entrance. Julia is wearing blue and purple on her clothes and hair. Classic. Kiana James is on the apron talking. Michin sends Julia outside the ring. At some point, Julia gives Michin a neck breaker to the floor. Pretty cool looking. One thing I can say is that the crowd, though, isn't that much into this match. I can't blame them, and remember, this comes from a Julia mark. By the way, I watched this on Netflix, and there's this thing that says we'll be back in this many minutes in the right corner. I can only imagine what nightmare this is for those that have to endure all those ads. I really feel for you. A near fall happens and some trading of blows. Julia's back in control with the Rings of Saturn mandible claw combination, but it looked more like she was stuffing her hand in Michin's mouth. But that's the mandible claw. My bad. Julia really works a heel well, but I have to say, the way the crowd is reacting to her overall, I wouldn't be surprised to see her in AEW in 3 years. We'll have to see. Both women trade some strikes. Cole calls them vicious. In actuality, they are pretty weak. Some more near falls, Kiana's on the apron, Michin attacks her, and Julia takes her out a running knee. No surprise there. Kiana then attacks Michin, and the ref takes her off. Meh. As a match, it worked, but it's really hard to care about some of these things the way they are booked. I'm sorry. It was just meh. And again, I feel bad because I really like Julia. I like her work, but I like her work in Japan. And her work in Japan and her work here don't really translate as well. Just different mentalities, different ways of working. And I guess it's different fans at the end of the day that is going to be her weakest point. Hopefully she'll be able to, steer her ship or, well, it's AEW for you against Riho. That's for sure. Next, we have a segment with my favorite women's tag team. Yes, Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss, of course. Flair is with her leg in a cast crying. Bliss comes in and says, she brought the doctor and she's the doctor. She checks on Flair's heart and she hears nothing. Flair says she has one there, if you say so. Bliss tells her she needs the power of friendship to heal her and gives Flair the doll. You know which doll. The stupid doll she had when she was with Bray Wyatt. I really dislike that thing. Nevertheless, nice segment. And I have to be honest, I really like the way these two work overall. It's just perfect. I don't think there's a pair of women that work better than these two at the moment. And if it keeps going on, I'm not sure there will ever be anybody close to reaching what they can do. But it doesn't matter. Burn it down. Seth comes in. Wrong. He's in the wind box, whatever, in the crowd. The crowd sings for a while. And when I say a while, I really mean a while because they sing for half a minute while he's basking into it. And then there's an ad break of 2.5 minutes before we go back to the arena. And the music is still playing. This is going to be a long one, that's for sure. Finally, when that stops, Seth says it's the end of their legend CM Punk, and then introduces Becky Lynch, after hyping her up a lot, which, whatever, heel things. Of course, Becky enters and gets booed. Now, the boos are pretty strong, I have to say. Her song also goes on for way longer than it really should. Once it stops, thank God, the crowd starts chanting AJ Lee. Becky looks surprised and she reprimands the crowd. Of course, she ends up hyping herself up because, logically, the boos for her are huge. And I think they're bigger than what Sami Zayn got when he interrupted Cena. Of course, Becky goes in for the cheap heat of talking about the sports team. She says all their teams suck, they all suck, and more importantly, Punk sucks. Cult of Personality hits, and Punk takes his dear time to enter the ring. I am telling you, this is a very long one. This was way longer than it should have been. Nevertheless, doesn't matter. Sid has a conversation with the little kid saying CM Punk is boring. Okay, let's move on. At least I think that's the best thing in this segment now that I think about it in retrospect. Doesn't matter. Now, you would think that Seth Rollins would go in the ring to be with his wife and protect her from this geriatric threat. But he doesn't. He just stands there. No, again, it's not helped by the fact that Punk is taking his time to get in the ring. And at some point, that dope Seth is waving at Punk. It takes Phil forever to get a mic and then forever to start talking. Granted, the crowd starts chanting CM Punk. He says this is not about Becky, but about Seth. Becky says it's about her. She asks him if he doesn't feel embarrassed. He should. Phil says he isn't, but Seth is a coward and he should feel embarrassed because he's hiding behind his wife and behind Paul Heyman. I was about to say Seth Rollins, that would have been funny. Could have done the whole cardboard thing they did with Jay White in AEW. But that's a whole different thing. Becky brings up the emasculation that happened, which was stupid. The crowd starts chanting AJ Lee. Becky says shut up. Punk says that she will let them chant AJ Lee. And also then says that he has girls on call. This sounds very wrong. And that includes his sister, Bailey, Rhea Ripley, that are gonna come in and help him beat Becky up. Then we go back to the emasculation. Becky slaps him more than she should and calls him an embarrassment. Does the whole weird thing where she puts her head in his chest again, which... whatever. After more emasculation, Phil says he won't put his hand on a lady, but he has somebody who will. And to be fair, for a moment, I wish it was Baron Corbin. I wish he kind of gave up on MLW and Noseman just brought him back just to do another one of those black hole slams or whatever he does on Becky Lynch. You know what? That would have been perfect. I think that would have been way better than what happened. No, it was AJ Lee. We all knew it was going to happen. Despite the former chants for AJ Lee, the crowd didn't go as ballistic as they did for Cena when he entered, or Brock Lesnar when he came in as, to disrupt the match. It didn't even reach the levels of the booing Becky Lynch got earlier. Of course, Becky is scared of this woman that hasn't wrestled in 10 years and is also smaller than her, but doesn't matter. After Lee also takes her time to get in the ring, we get a catfight. But it's an embarrassment of a catfight. It's more AJ Lee getting one up on Becky Lynch. At some point, she throws her out of the ring, and Seth Rollins comes to his wife's aid next to her. No, because understand me, the heel can't attack the woman of the man he hates. No. He's going up and screaming at her something. They just move on the ramp. Punk and Lee then end up hugging in the ring as Seth and Becky are on the ramp. Seeing how this whole thing played out, this was worse than watching two dysfunctional hillbilly families having a shouting match. At least then, when one wife puts her hand on the other's husband, the offended one becomes a tiger and strikes back and immediately. No, this was more like a bad Pokemon battle. But instead of Pokemon, both opponents used their wives instead. Should I go on that I really didn't like this? Hell, I get the idea. Make AJ Lee's comeback feel important, feel big. So they put it in the main event. But it all felt drowned out and less impactful than it really should have been. Really. And the fact that it took forever for the music to stop and get to some proper action, some, I would say proper story building, but there's barely any there, granted. A little, but it wouldn't really have affected me any different if it was Rhea Ripley instead of AJ Lee. Nevertheless, it really felt less impactful than it should have been. You know what? I would have taken the Cena Zayn ending over this as the main event. But to be honest, I can't blame Noseman that much for what's happening. Zayn already proved twice to be bad for ratings. And people like a good comeback, right? They like it when a wrestler they grew up with, a wrestler they liked back in the day, comes in and does something cool. But this just didn't feel like it. After the start of the show, the crowd really seemed to have died down until the Becky boos. I can't believe I'm gonna say this, but I prefer Dynamite this week. And that was convoluted, overbooked mess. But at least it didn't take Mark Briscoe a minute and a half for his music to stop and then another half a minute to get his piece in. It's just another bad Smackdown. And I can't believe I'm saying this because it had the potential there. And not even the crowd cared that much after the Cena part. Oh well.